After 20 years practicing medicine, one thing still surprises me: how often the body whispers before it ever screams. I remember a patient once describing a feeling she couldn't quite explain. "I'm exhausted," she said softly, "but somehow I can't rest." Have you ever felt that way? Tired in your bones, yet strangely alert when your head touches the pillow? Research suggests this wired but tired state becomes more common after 60. But here's what makes it fascinating: it's not always about stress or even age itself. Sometimes it's about signals. Inside your body, every nutrient you take is more than just a substance. It's a message, a tiny instruction delivered to your cells. Vitamin D3 doesn't just support health. Scientists have observed it acts more like a hormone, nudging your body toward wakefulness and activity. Magnesium, on the other hand, behaves like a gentle hand on your shoulder, encouraging your nervous system to slow down. Now imagine this: what happens when your body receives both messages at the same time? It's a bit like trying to fall asleep in a room where the lights are flickering on and off. One moment, your system is told to relax. The next, it's told to stay alert. And over time, that confusion creates something subtle but powerful, what I often think of as internal signal noise. But here's the part most people never consider. What if the problem isn't what you're taking, but when you're taking it? Because just beneath the surface, a quiet biological conflict may already be unfolding. And this is where the story begins to take an unexpected turn. It often begins with something small: a morning routine that feels responsible, even reassuring, a handful of supplements, a glass of water, a quiet belief that you're doing something good for your body. But what if, beneath that simple ritual, something more complicated is happening? As we grow older, the body doesn't just change in visible ways. Research suggests the digestive system itself begins to shift. Stomach acid levels tend to decline, and the efficiency of nutrient absorption becomes less predictable. At the same time, scientists have observed that the nervous system can become more reactive, more sensitive to even subtle internal signals. Now pause for a moment and imagine your digestive system as a narrow doorway. In your younger years, that doorway was wide open, welcoming nutrients in with ease. But over time, it becomes more selective, slower, a little more crowded. So what happens when multiple supplements arrive all at once? They don't simply glide through, they compete. Minerals like magnesium rely on specific transport pathways. Fat-soluble vitamins like D3 and K2 require bile and dietary fat to be properly absorbed. When everything enters together, studies indicate a kind of internal traffic jam can form. Nutrients vying for attention, some getting through, others quietly left behind. And here's the subtle part most people miss. Even when nothing feels wrong, this competition can create what I call an absorption gap, a space between what you take and what your body actually uses. Could it be that your body isn't lacking nutrients, but struggling to interpret them? Because once you see this clearly, another layer begins to reveal itself, and it changes everything. Now picture this: a busy intersection in the middle of a city, cars arriving from every direction, signals flashing, drivers unsure whether to stop or go. For a moment, everything seems fine, but then, slowly, movement stalls, engines idle, progress slows to a crawl. Research suggests something remarkably similar can happen inside the body, especially after 60. When multiple supplements are taken together, they don't always cooperate. Minerals like magnesium, calcium, and even zinc can compete for shared transport pathways in the intestines. Fat-soluble nutrients like vitamin D3 and K2 depend on bile flow and dietary fats to move efficiently. When these processes overlap, studies indicate that absorption may become less efficient and sometimes inconsistent. But here's the deeper question. What happens to the nutrients that don't get absorbed properly? Some may simply pass through. Others may linger in ways that subtly influence digestion or signaling pathways. And over time, this can create a quiet imbalance, not dramatic, not obvious, but enough to be felt. Perhaps as that strange afternoon fatigue, or the restless feeling at night, or even the sense that something just isn't working the way it used to. I once spoke with someone who said, "I take all the right things, but I don't feel the difference anymore." Have you ever wondered why that happens? It may not be about taking more, it may be about timing and clarity. Because the body doesn't just need nutrients, it needs direction. And this is where one particular nutrient begins to stand out, not as a supplement, but as a signal of daylight itself. There's one nutrient that behaves less like a supplement and more like a sunrise: vitamin D3. Most people think of it simply as a vitamin for bones, but scientists have observed something far more intriguing. D3 acts like a hormone, sending signals that influence your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that tells your body when to wake and when to rest. Have you ever noticed how natural sunlight gently pulls you into the day? That's not just light, it's biology. When D3 enters your system, research suggests it interacts with receptors throughout the body, subtly aligning with cortisol, the hormone that helps you feel alert and ready. It's a quiet activation signal, like opening the curtains in the morning. But here's where things become interesting. What happens if that sunrise signal arrives at the wrong time, especially in the evening, when your body is preparing for something entirely different? There's also another layer many people overlook. Vitamin D3 is fat-soluble. This means it doesn't dissolve easily in water. Studies indicate that taking it alongside healthy fats, like eggs, avocado, or nuts, can significantly improve absorption. Without that, much of it may pass through unnoticed. So the question becomes, is your body truly receiving the message, or just glimpsing it briefly? Because once you understand D3 as a signal, not just a supplement, you begin to see how timing can shape everything that follows. And what happens next is where many people unknowingly disrupt their nights. It's a pattern I've heard many times. I fall asleep just fine, someone tells me, but then I wake up around 3 a.m. and I can't drift back. Have you ever experienced that quiet, frustrating moment? The room still, the clock glowing, your body tired, but your mind somehow alert. Research suggests this kind of fragmented sleep becomes more common with age. But here's something rarely discussed. Sometimes it's not just stress or aging, sometimes it's timing. When vitamin D3 is taken later in the day, scientists have observed it may subtly interfere with melatonin, the hormone responsible for guiding you into deep, restorative sleep. Think of melatonin as the body's nightfall signal. It rises as darkness settles, preparing every cell for rest and repair. Now imagine trying to dim the lights while someone keeps switching them back on. That's the biological confusion that can occur. D3 isn't harmful in itself, far from it, but when taken at night, its wakefulness signal may arrive just as your body is trying to power down. Studies indicate this mismatch can contribute to lighter sleep, early waking, or that strange sensation of never feeling fully restored. And over time, this quiet disruption can ripple outward, affecting memory, mood, even muscle recovery. So the question becomes, is your body truly struggling to sleep, or is it receiving mixed instructions? Because just as D3 sends a signal to begin the day, another nutrient plays a very different role, one that doesn't activate, but directs.
If vitamin D3 is the signal that opens the day, then vitamin K2 is the quiet guide that decides where things go next, and its role is far more profound than most people realize. Have you ever wondered how calcium, something so essential for strong bones, can also be linked to stiffness in the arteries? It seems contradictory, doesn't it? Scientists often refer to this as the calcium paradox. Research indicates that as we age, calcium can begin to drift away from bones and settle into places it doesn't belong, like blood vessels or soft tissues. So the question isn't just how much calcium is in the body, but where it's being directed. This is where vitamin K2 becomes essential. Studies suggest K2 activates specific proteins like osteocalcin and matrix GLA that act almost like traffic controllers. Their role is to guide calcium into bones, where it strengthens structure, and away from arteries, where it could contribute to stiffness. It's a subtle orchestration, quiet but powerful. And here's something even more interesting. Not all forms of K2 behave the same. The MK7 form in particular has been observed to remain active in the bloodstream longer, offering a more sustained guiding effect. But timing still matters, because K2 works in harmony with D3, responding to the calcium that D3 helps bring into circulation. So what happens when this delicate coordination is disrupted, when signals overlap or arrive out of sequence? That's where the story becomes even more layered and where many routines begin to quietly unravel. Think of vitamin D3 and K2 as partners in a carefully choreographed dance. One invites calcium into the bloodstream, the other ensures it finds its proper home. But like any dance, timing is everything. If D3 raises calcium levels and K2 directs its placement, then their relationship depends on rhythm. Research suggests that when taken together earlier in the day, alongside food and healthy fats, they can work in quiet synergy, supporting bone integrity while helping maintain flexibility in blood vessels. But what happens when this rhythm is disrupted? Imagine an orchestra where instruments begin playing at slightly different tempos. The notes are all correct, but the harmony begins to fade. In the body, this can feel subtle. Perhaps stiffness that wasn't there before, or a sense that your joints and muscles don't respond the way they once did, or simply a lingering question: why doesn't this feel as effective anymore? Scientists have observed that consistency in timing may influence how these nutrients are utilized over time. Not dramatically, not overnight, but gradually, like a tide shifting direction. And yet, even when D3 and K2 are aligned, there is another piece of the puzzle waiting quietly in the background. A nutrient that doesn't stimulate or direct, but restores. And its voice is soft, almost easy to overlook, until the body begins asking for it, especially at night. As evening settles in, the body begins a quiet transition. Heart rate slows, breathing softens, the nervous system shifts from doing to repairing.
And this is where magnesium enters the story. But not all magnesium feels the same. Have you ever experienced that sudden tightening in your calf at night, or a subtle flutter in your chest just as you're trying to relax? Research suggests these sensations may be linked to how muscles and nerves handle calcium. Calcium helps muscles contract. Magnesium, on the other hand, helps them release. It's a delicate balance. Without enough magnesium available at the right time, muscles may struggle to fully relax, like a hand that can close but has difficulty letting go. Now, here's where magnesium glycinate becomes especially interesting. Studies indicate that the glycinate form is bound to glycine, an amino acid known for its calming influence on the nervous system. Unlike some other forms, it's less likely to disturb digestion and more likely to support a gentle transition into rest. Think of it as a quiet whisper to the body. It's safe to slow down now. Timing, again, becomes essential. When taken 30 to 60 minutes before bed, magnesium glycinate may help prepare the body for what researchers often call the rest and repair phase, where cellular maintenance, including processes like muscle recovery and nervous system recalibration, begins to unfold. But here's the hidden layer. What happens if this calming signal arrives at the exact same time as a stimulating one?
It's something I see more often than you might expect. A well-intentioned routine. A small handful of supplements taken right before bed, all at once. Vitamin D3, vitamin K2, magnesium. Simple, efficient, sensible, at least on the surface. But beneath that simplicity, something far more complex may be unfolding. Have you ever tried to fall asleep while your phone keeps lighting up with notifications? That's the closest metaphor I can offer. Research suggests that when stimulating and calming signals enter the body simultaneously, the nervous system may struggle to fully commit to either state. D3 gently nudges toward alertness. Magnesium encourages relaxation. And when these messages overlap, the result can feel unsettled. Not dramatic, not immediate, but noticeable. Perhaps you drift off, only to wake a few hours later. Or your sleep feels lighter, less restorative. Or mornings begin with a kind of quiet fatigue that lingers longer than it should. Scientists have observed that this bioclash doesn't always produce obvious symptoms at first. Instead, it creates subtle fragmentation, like a book with missing pages. The story continues, but something feels incomplete. So the question becomes, is your body truly resisting sleep, or simply trying to interpret conflicting instructions? Because once you separate these signals, once you give each its own space, the body often responds in ways that feel surprisingly natural. And this is where a simple shift begins to change everything. Sometimes the most meaningful changes are not about adding more, but about creating space, a different rhythm, a quieter conversation between your body and the signals it receives. Research suggests that when nutrients are aligned with the body's natural timing, something subtle begins to happen. The noise fades, and clarity returns. So imagine your day unfolding in two gentle phases. In the morning, as light filters through the window and your body prepares to engage with the world, signals of activation arrive. Vitamin D3, alongside K2, taken with a meal that includes healthy fats, perhaps eggs, a slice of avocado, or a handful of nuts. Not rushed, not forced, simply aligned with the body's natural rise in energy. Then, as evening approaches and the world begins to quiet, a different signal emerges. Magnesium glycinate, a glass of water, a moment of stillness before sleep. Taken 30 to 60 minutes before bed, it becomes less of a routine and more of an invitation. Studies indicate that this separation, this simple honoring of timing, may support more efficient absorption, smoother nervous system transitions, and a deeper sense of rest. But here's the important part. This isn't about perfection, it's about observation. What changes when your body receives clear, consistent signals? Because over the course of days, then weeks, something begins to shift. And if you're patient enough to notice it, the results can feel quietly profound. There is something deeply reassuring about the body's ability to respond when we begin to listen more carefully. Not forcefully, not urgently, but with quiet attention. I've often found that when people make small adjustments like these, simply changing the timing of what they already take, they begin to notice subtle differences. Research suggests that within a window of about 2 to 4 weeks, patterns may start to emerge. Sleep feels a little deeper, muscles a little looser, mornings a little clearer. Not dramatic transformations, but meaningful ones. And yet, there is one important layer that should always be acknowledged. Vitamin K2, for example, plays a role in blood clotting pathways. Scientists have observed that it may interact with certain medications, particularly blood thinners such as warfarin. Because of this, it's important that any changes involving K2 are discussed with a healthcare professional who understands your individual history. Because the goal is not just improvement, but harmony. So let me leave you with a simple question. What if your body has been ready to respond all along, just waiting for clearer instructions? Like a quiet room where the lights finally settle, no flicker, no confusion, just calm. Sometimes the path to feeling better isn't about doing more, it's about removing the interference and allowing your body to remember its rhythm once again.